Okay, so it's 2 o'clock, so let's get started. So thanks very much for joining us today. We're thrilled to be able to welcome you to Responsible Disruption and our 5th weekly Innovation Table Zoomcast. My name is James Gamage and I'm the Director of Innovation and the Social Impact Lab at the United Way of Calgary and area.
And my name is Monique Blau and I'm the Director of Strategy and Design in the lab and at J5, a Calgary-based innovation and design firm. And we're the hosts of Responsible Disruption. We're excited to welcome our guests as we explore purpose-led disruption with the Social Purpose Institute. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are currently gathered on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. The traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Maquintas, which we now call the city of Calgary. This traditional land of the Blackfoot Confederacy, as well as the Treaty 7 territory, which includes Kainai, Siksika, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda nations. We also like to recognize the Métis people and the Inuit people who have made their home here in Calgary. Next, we have a few housekeeping items to cover for today. We are recording this session, so if you'd like to share it with your colleagues or friends, we will email you a follow-up link in the next couple of days. The recording will also be available on our YouTube channel. Our next Innovation Table episode is next Wednesday on May 13th at 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And in this session, we'll be exploring the new philanthropy and how philanthropy is changing and how to get involved. For today, our agenda will include introductions, an intro of the Social Purpose Institute, a Q&A, and a quick close. As we work through today's sessions, if you have questions, which I'm sure you will, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom panel. We'll be collecting these throughout the session today, and we'll answer as many as we can. Over to you, James.
Oh, I was on mute. Our social systems are being disrupted and there is demand for new ideas, solutions, products and services. This demand for support continues to outpace the supply of funding. So we in the Social Impact Lab, which is a partnership between J5 and the United Way of Calgary and area, are responding to this disruption by investing in innovation, which we are calling responsible disruption, ensuring that any change that results is considered and fair to Calgarians and communities. Our Responsible Disruption Zoomcast series is a series of discussions with leading players in the social innovation sector and beyond. Discussions about communities, systems, and the role of the individual in change. If you're in an organization, one of the ways to lead social change is to drive towards a social purpose, and that is the subject of this week's Zoomcast. The Social Purpose Institute was launched by the United Way Lower Mainland to successfully help organizations define their social purpose as a catalyst for driving disruption. We will speak to 2 organizations about the reasons for leaning into social purpose, the process they followed, as well as the new insights and the benefits their organizations have derived from doing so. You're on mute, Monique.
We're just delighted today to be able to introduce Mary Ellen Schaafsma, who is the Director of the Social Purpose Institute, United Way of the Lower Mainland. And Mary Ellen is a leading expert steering the Social Purpose Institute. She's dedicated to fostering social purpose in businesses across the country, and she helps companies experience the benefits of pivoting their business model and instilling social purpose at their core, all while creating tangible and meaningful community and societal impact. Mary Ellen has a master's in health administration from the University of Ottawa and a certificate in social innovation from SFU. Mary Ellen also has a couple guests with her today, which she will be introducing shortly. And just a reminder, the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom panel will make sure we can be responsive to your questions. Over to you, Mary Ellen.
Great, thanks so much, James and Monique. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today. In a few minutes, as Monique said, we'll be talking to a couple business leaders on purpose. But before we do that, I wanted to briefly give you a bit of background about the Social Purpose Institute and what we mean when we talk about social purpose, and give you a bit about the business case for social purpose and why it's more important now more than ever to have a social purpose in business. Next slide. So the Social Purpose Institute is an initiative of the United Way of the Lower Mainland, which is Greater Vancouver for non-British Columbians. And we've been building the Social Purpose Institute since 2016. And we're doing it with the deep understanding that fostering social purpose in business will lead to the kind of societal change that can only be brought about if the corporate sector redefines its role in society. And we decided we wanted to support that shift. We've been working with a social purpose expert in Canada, Coro Strandberg, to develop services and programs. And we exist to grow business for good, to mobilize a national movement of social purpose in business, and plan to scale this out across Canada. It's born in Greater Vancouver, but intended to scale out everywhere. We do this through doing research and providing resources, offering workshops, offering cohort-based intensive programs to help companies define and implement a social purpose, panel discussions, networking opportunities, and more. We are currently actually already scaled out into Regina and looking at other provinces in Canada through the United Way movement. Next slide. So you may have seen these letters that have come out each January from Larry Fink. He's the CEO of BlackRock Investment, the largest investment firm on the planet. And for the last 3 years, he has written to the businesses they invest in on the imperative of shifting to purpose. And now, as the COVID reality really set in, he also wrote to shareholders about the importance of purpose. As you can see here in April, companies and investors with a strong sense of purpose and a long-term approach will be better able to navigate this crisis and its aftermath. We can only serve our full set of stakeholders if we continue to make a positive contribution to society. In the past letters, he talks about purpose, not a tagline, but the company's fundamental reason for being, what it does every day to create value for stakeholders. Next slide. So social purpose in business is moving well out of the realm of it sounds good in theory and is firmly into being proven in practice, supported by investor, consumer, and employee choices. In fact, right now, there are companies that the Social Purpose Institute works with that have had to scale back to bare bones or actually no operations at all, but they are using their social purpose lens to reimagine their future on the other side of this. And they're telling us that it is opening up new ideas and inspiring innovation, a whole new outlook on their future after COVID's over. There are other companies in our programs that are telling us that they know that their purpose is speaking to people right now, both the public and their employees, and that this puts them ahead of the competition now and definitely will after this is all over, leading to their long-term success. In fact, we're also seeing, and I'm sure you've seen it in the news as well, many companies not necessarily having a specific social purpose, but recognizing that they need to show up in a deeper way for their communities right now. And they're adopting social responses to the COVID crisis. We analyzed hundreds of responses from hundreds of companies, and we came up with this checklist that you can access on our website there. That helps give companies ideas of what they can do when it's a new way of looking at things and how they can use their competencies and assets. So a checklist to let businesses know what more they can do beyond the traditional philanthropy and volunteering, which is great, to bring more of their business to help in this situation. So what is a social purpose business? Well, a social purpose business is a company whose enduring reason for being is to create a better world. It is an engine for good, creating social benefits by the very act of conducting their business. Its growth is a positive force in society. And so this is the definition that we researched at the Social Purpose Institute, and it kind of has 3 features, very specific. So it has to be the why of the company. The reason the company exists at all is a societal reason. That's the next one. It has to have a societal ambition, and that could be a social issue, environmental, or as we're seeing quite frequently now, a blend of the two. And lastly, the profit model. We actually found there's two ways to look at that. Either your social purpose transcends profits and is just the reason you exist, or leaders see it as a route to profitability. And again, we're fine with either one of those reasons because profits lead to growth, which leads to more good in society. Next slide. You may be wondering then, how do we find out what is the best fit social purpose for our company and what's unique about our company? And this is kind of the basic format of how we walk companies through a rigorous process to get at that. So you first look at what is the need in the world that your company can fulfill. So what societal trends impact on your company and that your company has a unique ability to impact upon. And then think about what's authentic and unique to your company that you can bring to the table and reimagine in order to fulfill that societal trend that you've identified. And right where those intersect is where you're going to find your company's purpose and cover all kinds of big, bold new opportunities that you never saw before until you put this new lens on things. So I think many of us agree that this disruption currently to business as usual is really an opportunity to redefine what that means. Maybe business as usual wasn't working as well as it once did. As many are pointing out, the shareholder primacy, pure profit model is failing other important stakeholder groups to businesses, such as society, employees, our environment. So that is where social purpose comes in and illuminates how this pandemic is actually a catalyst for change, to find new ways for the business to deliver and define itself and why it exists at all. When we're on the other side of this, companies need to be asking themselves, what purpose does your company serve on the whole? Why are we here? Why do we exist? Why will people want to do business with us? And then knowing this and living it out will put social purpose companies ahead of the pack. It really is a perfect time to think about reinventing stakeholder relationships, defining your purpose as a catalyst for innovation, and navigating turbulent times, not only because it's good for society, but also because it's good for business. Next slide. So this, we also researched the business case for social purpose, and these are the 6 main reasons that social purpose has great benefits for companies that we've seen in the literature. Attract and retain customers, build customer brand advocacy. We know that consumers vote with their wallets, and if a company aligns with the values of the consumer, it's a very positive experience for the company. If they don't, especially in the world of social media, it can be a very negative experience. So social purpose helps with customer relationships. Same with employees. We know this next generation of workers and the current generation, like myself, want to work for a company and want to have meaning in their work and bring something to the world and have something beyond just earning a paycheck. Also, this strengthens third-party relationships, enables new collaborations because you suddenly have a whole new lens on your business and you're recognizing new partners and new collaborations you can use to improve your business and create new value. It also increases trust, obviously. If you're showing up authentically with purpose, people are going to trust your company, they're going to want to come to your company, and the operating context in which you operate will be strengthening around you. Increased financial performance, a la Larry Fink, access to capital. More and more investors are looking for purpose companies. It mitigates risks for the business and enables higher revenues and attracting those customers. And lastly, and I think this is the one that we're seeing show up the most at this current time, is innovation. It enables businesses to transform themselves in ways they've never recognized before. It enhances their resiliency, and they're finding all sorts of new ways that they can bring business benefits through purpose. And we are witnessing these benefits in the companies we're currently engaged with. And very shortly, you're going to hear from 2 business leaders on how they are seeing this. Next slide. So just before we get to the panel, just to give you some concrete examples, because sometimes it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what this means. These are companies' social purpose statements. Now, obviously, behind these statements have to be consistent actions, authenticity, and a genuine commitment to these statements. I'm not going to go through all of these, but CVS Pharmacy, I'll just tell you a little bit about their story. 6 or 8 years ago, they decided to define their social purpose, and this is it: help people on their path to better health. Now, they're a big pharmacy chain like Shoppers up here, but down in the States. And they immediately realized that they could not live this authentically if they kept selling tobacco products. So they stripped the shelves, and tobacco was one of the biggest. Looks like I've been muted by mistake. There we go. Sorry about that. Tobacco products were one of CVS Pharmacy's biggest revenue generators. Oh, muted again. Okay, sorry, I keep getting muted, it looks like. So they took all the tobacco products off the shelf, immediately lost billions in revenue. And this is a publicly traded company. Good news is, people believed them. People believed their purpose was genuine. People believed that this pharmacy wanted to help them, and it drew customers and more business, and they've been growing by leaps and bounds and made up for all of their losses plus since. So now we're going to hear from 2 business leaders who are both participating at different stages in the Social Purpose Institute's Innovators Program, working through our process to define their own company's unique social purpose. All right. So I'd like to introduce to you Chris Peacock. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Traction On Demand. It's an IT company. And he's been there for about 10 years as one of the first employees, and has been a key player in growing Traction On Demand to over 950 people in 5 countries. And Traction On Demand, and I can attest to this, and its leadership have proven themselves to be a company that knows how to do things right and do the right thing. And Mike Schilling is the president and CEO of Community Savings. It's a full-service financial institution and the largest provider of banking services to BC's labor movement. He is passionate about placing the control of capital into the hands of workers through a member-owned financial system, which ensures money works for people. So hopefully you can see Chris and Mike. I can't, so I'm going to assume they're there. Monique, can I get a thumbs up? They're there? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Oh, there's Chris. Okay. First off, I wondered if maybe the 2 of you, one at a time, could give us a little bit about, just tell us a bit about your company, share with us why you decided to embark on defining your social purpose. What was your approach to developing it, and where are you today? Because you are in different phases of the work. And Mike, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Mary Ellen. I appreciate that introduction. So as you said, we're a BC credit union. Community Savings is a BC credit union. We're headquartered here in the Greater Vancouver area. We're a full-service financial institution. You can do what you can do with a bank, you can do with us: wealth management, mortgages, loans, credit cards, as well as branch banking. What makes us unique, as you said, is we're the largest provider of banking services to the BC labour movement, with our members representing over 250,000 workers in BC. Why did we get involved? Well, you know, as a credit union, I believe we were born out of purpose. Our founding story is that in 1944, over 75 years ago, 11 ordinary people, members of the IWA union, got together and decided that the banks at the time weren't really providing for working people. You know, it was a different age back then, and actually, if you were a sort of cash in hand wage employee, you might not have access to banking services. So they decided that they wanted to build an alternative financial system, and they started a bank, or better still, a credit union of their own. And I think that's a great story, and it's a story that's obviously full of purpose. And I think, Mary Ellen, when I first was introduced to the Social Purpose Institute and we got talking, it just seemed to resonate with that founding story that I was learning so much about coming into this organization. One question that was asked internally was, we do have a good sense amongst the team of our purpose. So why do we need to go on this journey? And I think very strongly that it's really important for us to do it. I think there's a risk of complacency in organizations, and we want to remain at the forefront of our industry, and we need to innovate. We all know we need to innovate in technology, in product, in service, etc. But we also need to innovate in terms of purpose, not change our purpose necessarily, but how do we articulate that purpose in our time to our team and to our members and our potential customers? How do we remain relevant to people today in terms of the service we offer? But really a very key one for us is there's lots of great organizations which have started more recently, some new startups, organizations that have been around for a while, organizations that have been started in different ways outside of the cooperative movement, outside of financial services. And we get to hang out with those guys as part of the Social Purpose Institute, and we get to learn a lot from them. And that was a big pull for us.
Great. And how far along in the process are you in defining your social purpose?
Well, that's the other thing. This isn't a quick exercise necessarily. It's not just, oh yeah, come in and sort of brainstorm a slogan. And I've been really impressed with that. I think the approach for us, and I look at this personally actually, because we've tried to create the space and the time to think about this. And I know space and time is often a luxury for us all. And as I've moved on in my career, I've understood the purpose of creating blank spots in my diary and having that time to stop and think and be creative in what we do. And I think that's organizationally really important too. So what the Social Purpose Institute has given us is that space and time. And what we're using that for right now is we're speaking to our partners, our suppliers, our competitors, our regulators, our board, the team, the members, and of course, as I mentioned, the people within the cohort. We're having conversations which are different to usual. It's not the day-to-day running of our business. It's not even the operational or strategic planning. It goes beyond that horizon. And we're having pretty profound and interesting conversations and taking the time to do that. So we initially went through a period of self-analysis, and the stage we're at now is really that stakeholder engagement, but very different than the usual stakeholder engagement you do.
Yeah, great, thanks. And Chris, tell us a little bit about Traction on Demand and why you decided to embark on clearly defining your social purpose, and what is your social purpose today?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So quick bit of background. We're a professional services organization. We do implementation and development of technology for organizations, specifically focused around Salesforce and on the Salesforce platform. Our portfolio of companies now includes SaaS products as well as a professional services organization. 13 years in business. We're just under 1,000 people right now. And we're a B Corp. And the reason I'll mention B Corp is because it ties into a lot about the purpose. So to your point about why we kind of dug into this, it was a bit of I'll say almost a coincidence, because we were looking at doing a brand evolution or a clear brand articulation exercise. And when the SPI reached out to us and kind of said, hey, do you guys want to go through? I was like, this is perfect timing to go in and reevaluate your mission statement and your purpose and your positioning. It's great to actually dig in right to the beginning of what is your purpose. And Mike, I love the way you said how it's not a slogan. Fink mentioned it on that slide, that it's also not a tagline. It really is kind of that core being. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit skeptical when I went in, because I was like, I know our purpose. Like, I feel it deep within. I've been part of the company since the beginning. I just know it. But the challenge was, how do you articulate it? And then as soon as I started trying to articulate it, I started pulling out almost slogans or things that we had rallied behind in the past. Community, not a company. Here because you want to be, not because you have to be. Like, just all more creating more time to play, and all of them, they were circling around it, but it was a challenge, and it took us the process to actually get to a point where we defined what our purpose was. Now, one other thing I'll add is, like I mentioned, that we're a B Corp, so that was the whole reason we went through that exercise. Is it's a way of kind of measuring or being accountable to the fact that you're doing things right and doing things the right way. But this was a big question of why are you doing it? And it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be as a marketer and a brand person to craft that into words. So that the exercise was awesome. It was beneficial. Where we landed on ours after the process is waste no potential. And I'll talk a little bit about how we got there without trying to ramble on too much, but there was a whole bunch of different people involved, including our CEO and founder, Michelle Malpass, who is our CEO's wife and runs our whole foundation side of our business. Myself, our executive creative director who was working on brand. And at the end of this whole exercise and these ideas and crafting it, the words for why we are ultimately came out of Greg's mouth. And it wasn't in that exact statement of waste no potential, but we kind of interviewed him to validate some of the directions we were going. And we said, like, why did you start this? I asked, like, why did you hire me? Why did you hire Mike, the first person he hired? He's like, there was just so much more that I felt that I could be doing that I wasn't doing. And so it kind of unlocked the result of what was our purpose statement.
Great, thanks. Mike, what new insights have you gained about your company as you work through the process of defining your social purpose, and how would you say it's helping you now as a decision lens during COVID?
Yeah, well, my background, I'm fairly new in role, actually. So, in the first 12 months in the seat, insights come thick and fast. You're learning all the time. I'm learning about my board. I'm learning about the team. I'm learning about our members and the business. So that's been great. But I think being part of the Social Purpose Institute throughout this has just meant that those insights came thick and fast. And that's great because I'm fairly impatient. I wanted to get things going and I wanted to learn as much as I could about the organization and move it on. And giving us the ability to ask some really interesting questions, which really drew out the essence of the organization, was useful. And at the time, obviously, we thought, well, this is great because we're going to be going on this sort of 12-month journey and then beyond. And it's going to help us develop the strategies. And we had a timeline, which was a long timeline. I want to be in this job for a while, so I was kind of planning ahead. But obviously then, in March, the world's changed, right? So, what struck me there was I was so grateful that we'd spent the sort of preceding sort of 6 months plus thinking about this, because there's never a good time. And at the time we felt busy, and at the time there felt like there were other priorities. And then March hits and the world turns upside down, and there you go. And I know one of the questions that's coming on the Q&A, which is, what's the right time to build social purpose? And obviously it feels difficult to prioritize at the moment. But, I think the lesson is that there's sort of never a good time, right? There's always a competing priority. There's always something else we could have been getting onto that felt more important. But, the decision to start this journey and some of the other decisions I made early on as I came into the organization, difficult decisions in some ways. Boy, am I glad I made them now. And specifically thinking about the start of the social purpose journey, you identify the assets within your organization in the broadest sense of the word, not the financial assets, not just your plant and machinery. You look at the broader assets that you've got within the organization and you match them to effectively social problems which exist in the world, and you sort of see where they marry up. And for us, and I'll keep brief on this because I could talk a lot about this, in some ways, obviously sustainability, if we go back a couple of months, sustainability was the main thing that people were talking about. It's obviously a critical and very important issue, but I personally felt that perhaps it was crowding out some of the other issues, and it was crowding out the issue that we stand behind about working people and the rights of working people and the democratization of money. And I think in some ways we stuck to our guns and we said, no, actually we're not the green bank, we're not the sustainable bank. We obviously support those things, we're not ignorant to it, but we stuck to our guns and to our principles about like, as I said, the democratization of capital and the rights of working people. And actually that was great because that's a story now that we're all facing and we have to deal with.
Yeah, thanks. And Chris, over to you. Have you gained any new insights as you work through the process of defining your social purpose? How is it helping you now in this time of COVID? And I know that we'll be talking about some of the things that you've done in response to COVID as well.
Yeah, so I would say that the second part of the question is how it's affecting in this time of crisis, or just even what it's doing once you have defined it and are rallying behind it. For us, it's been a lot of validation because it's new. Like, it's new that we've articulated that way. So it's kind of a validation point that yes, this is right. This is kind of leading us. It's not necessarily it's the foundation of who we are and how we work, but it's not necessarily the foundation of what we're doing. So looking back at that, where it's kind of the compass or the North Star of to say, yeah, we're doing things the right way, and is this in line with purpose? And we've done that with values. We define corporate values really early in our company history, and we look back at those every year and we tweak them. We've tweaked them a little bit. We've seen that they haven't changed a ton, but tweaked a little bit. And this is just like another validation point that you look back at this and say, okay, is this in line? A really interesting point on what Mike was saying is someone coming in new and going through this exercise for an organization. One of the groups in our cohort was a 100-year-old printing company where it's third generation, and you have now the grandson defining the purpose that is, I mean, genetically it's part of him and his being, but also he's kind of inherited, and it's, and I took that to heart a lot. And I said, whatever our purpose is, I need to be able to look back, hey, this is what drove us right from the beginning. And this is what will drive us going forward. And it doesn't matter if you're new to the organization or you're the founder of the organization. But you need to consider that. You need to consider your stakeholders externally. You need to consider your internal stakeholders, your founding stakeholders, even if they're not even in this one case, the original founder wasn't alive anymore, and they're still digging in and tapping into that.
Yeah, it's really important to not just look at where you're at today and where you want to go, but where you came from as well, for sure. That's definitely part of the process.
Just make one quick point on, and Mike addressed that question, is when is the right time? And there's never a wrong time to start asking that question, whether you go through the whole process of getting alignment with all the way to the top and all the way out to customers and team and that. There's never a bad time to start asking that question. And if you have the buy-in of the founders, or if you are the founder, it's a great exercise to go through for yourself and for your organization.
Great. We'll stay with you, Chris. Can you give us an example of a pivot or a social response that that Traction on Demand has made during this time of COVID, and why you decided on that? If your purpose lens played a part in that?
Yeah, so as with, I'm sure, every single person online here, our world's changed. We went remote and distributed overnight, which for us was pretty easy. Our sales and distribution and servicing model is a remote model. But what we saw as professional services is interesting, because your revenue doesn't drop off. It's a leading indicator of business health. So we started looking at this and saying, okay, well, our forecast is dropping off, but our revenue is still healthy from the months before. But what is this going to look like? So we had to pivot and say, okay, so the different industries and verticals we service, they might be putting a pause on projects or slowing down the decision to move forward with certain things. But then there was a whole bunch of other industries that had to instantly transform overnight. So higher education was a big one. And we did a little bit of work in the higher education space. 8 weeks ago, we did a little bit. Now we do a lot. Healthcare was an area that we kind of dabbled in a little bit. And all of a sudden, there were new and different challenges in healthcare. And that the challenges were, arguably, they were there before, but the need to execute and act on them really fast just came right to the surface. So now where we've dropped and lost in some areas, we've gained in others. And then to the point of, so how does that tie to the purpose of waste no potential? A lot of that was also, what potential do we have? So at the beginning, we're like, how can we help? So we hopped on board with a group called Thrive Health, that we knew through our network. And they're like, we need to build a way for health facilities to manage resources. And we don't have time to go through procurement and costing and decision. We just need to act. And so we moved forward and we put 6 weeks worth of work. We had 30 hospitals live within 4 weeks of even starting the conversation. All the way to the point at the end, and when these hospitals were going live, we still had no commitment or no understanding of how we're going to get paid for the time we put in, or if we were going to, but it was the right thing. It's what was needed. And now what we learned, a little bit of that was faith, and if you build it, they will come, is we ended up offering that as open source free application. Mm-hmm. Any group that can benefit from it can have it. And we felt like that was a responsibility. But then what happened is a lot of the groups that were using it then said, well, we need some support in this. So then we were able to actually activate and do some services work to maintain our own business and our own core through it. And then again, it was like looking back at that, we had the potential to help and support where and what was needed at the time. And all the way to the top through every team member. And we asked that question a lot. It's like, should we be doing this? Like this might mean that our security is a lot less at the end of this, but it's what we should be doing.
Right. You know, as somebody said on some other call I was on around purpose recently, that really this pandemic has become motivation to move mountains, and purpose-driven leaders are truly reaching to spaces of innovation and showing up with their purpose in just the way you described. That's amazing. Thanks. And Mike, what about you? Can you give us an example of how your underlying purpose that you're teasing out right now has helped you respond during this crisis?
Yeah, well, you know, this is a health crisis which has sparked a massive financial crisis. So we realised early on that as a financial institution, we were going to be front and centre for this. There's not really the need for us to pivot. We're doing what we were built for right now, and so. But in terms of social response, you know, that's been moving faster than we've ever moved. Really thinking beyond the ways that we've previously thought about. Like I said. You know, we're in a strong position. Actually, we're in a fortunate position. Our members have built us into one of the strongest financial institutions in BC. We have, and for a financial institution, that means that you've got strong capital, you've got excellent access to liquidity, and that's where we sit. So we've done that over the years because we kind of made hay while the sun shined, and we realise now that we're in a financial crisis. We are in a position, and we have an obligation, we believe, to pay back to those members that had supported us and to the community that had supported us. So there's a number of ways we were able to do that. We decided early on that we were going to keep our credit. We knew our credit union was going to have to keep running. We knew we were an essential service before. That was a phrase that everyone was using. We knew we were going to be busier than ever, and we made a commitment to keep every branch open every day. So our most vulnerable members and members who can't access services in other ways can do that. We also realised we had a responsibility to the wider community, and physical distancing is something that we all have a responsibility for. And through talking to our members, and we've got an excellent relationship with our customer members, we've reduced branch footfall by about 80%. So really, we only have the essential services coming in, and we're doing our bit for physical distancing whilst remaining open and staying there. Some other things we went out with. We were the first to make the decision, announce the decision that we were going to go virtual within our head office, within our peer group, within the credit union sector. We were also the first to announce that we were introducing 6-month loan payment deferrals. We're the only financial institution that I've seen which has offered a truly interest-free line of credit to individuals and businesses to bridge this. And you know, these aren't great ways to make money in the short term, right? We're going to lose money off these products, but this is a great way to say who you are, and as I say, to pay back and sort of think that this thing is bigger than any of us, and we all need to put our shoulder to the wheel. The team has worked miracles. I keep saying actually that my job's been quite easy through this because we have as Chris was talking about, we have a really strong sense of purpose. My job's to decide what to do and which direction to go in. That's been easy. My team have had a terribly hard job actually making it work, and I'm really proud of them. But for me, it was just time to look at our community and not our bottom line.
Great. Okay, we'll stay with you. Final question, and it relates to one in the Q&A as well. But how has having a social purpose again, with you not fully defined yet, but such an underlying purpose, helped you during this time? How has it, have you leaned into it? Has it been important?
Enormously. I probably can't overstate this, but I think having that, and you know, I don't want to sound opportunistic about this, but our organization is going to come out of this relatively stronger than it went into it. And this is a crisis, and there are obviously very serious things going on. But and I want to be very clear about that. But and I hope none of my board members are listening right now. But you know, I do need to repeat, my job has been very simple in this because we have a very, very good sense of what we're about. And actually, my board are very aligned with that. And actually, the team are very aware of that. And the key strategic advantage that gave us right now was speed. Whilst other organizations deliberated about what was happening, trying to understand what was happening, trying to understand what they should do about it, and then trying to convince their stakeholders, such as their team or their board or whoever else, that that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
We could kind of skip that, and we went straight into delivering it. And the delivery is hard enough without having to have all that deliberation before. So for us, I think it's been an absolute key strategic advantage that we don't have a playbook, we don't have a crystal ball. None of us know exactly how this is going to pan out, but we have found the direction and the decisions that we needed to make with a lack of time and a lack of data. We've made them relatively easy.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. That's an incredible benefit. That definitely is going to put you ahead of others in this world. Chris, how about you? How has having a clearly defined social purpose helped your organization during this time? And also, as Mike also spoke to, and going into the other side of this, how do you think this is going to help you?
So I wrote this down, Mike. I love the way you put it in it's all about decisions and the ability to make decisions fast and have confidence in them. Take a little bit more risk when you have that confident understanding that this is what's driving. I think that's huge. And that's not limited to crisis situation or timing. It's all the time. It just makes you more confident in the direction and the decisions you're making. And then another one, I'm actually you put this, Mary Ellen, that purpose is the motivation. So I had a conversation earlier today where I was saying innovation is idea, technology is the tool, but then to put that one on there is purpose is the motivation to leverage those or to innovate or to do things differently. And then being able to do it quickly in a crisis time is great. And that ties back to the decision thing. And then the one I'd add on there is the power comes from the people. So I'm writing this down because I'm going to somehow use that one. Innovation's the idea, technology is a tool, purpose is the motivation, and people are the power. And that's been, like I said, it's the crisis has changed some of the things we do and how we do them, but it's not changed why we do them.
Right.
And that's, that we'll be saying that 5 years from now when we're all back out in the wild, in the wilderness.
Yeah, right. Great. Okay. Anything else to add? I actually do have just an add-on question. And after that, we're going to go to questions in the Q&A. So if you have any, we've got a couple sitting there, but if you have any more, please put them there. We're here till 1 or 2. Wait, sorry. What time is it where you are? We're
here till 3 in Mountain.
We're here till 3. Thanks, James. So in terms of purpose, like you guys are already either nearing the end of defining your purpose or very far through the process when this hit. What would you say to a company that has the underlying values, alignment? Is this the time to do this? To start really digging in and trying to clearly articulate and define your social purpose? Chris, you're the biggest on my screen, so
I'll just because we kind of said it before. There's no bad time to start. The one piece of advice I'd give, and I talk to people about this all the time. I'm a marketing tool and a fanboy for this entire exercise, and probably the best version of one, because I was a little skeptical at the first of if I'd have the time, if this was how valuable this is going to be, but I definitely feel that way. But I would say that the piece of advice is you need to have, it's not something that can be done out of your foundation or off the side of the desk of marketing. And even when we went and we presented our first draft of our social purpose at an event here in Vancouver, and I was going to do it, and I was talking to Greg about it. I'm like, it's really weird to have a chief marketing officer going and presenting your purpose. It seems contrived, right? Even though I was a big part of crafting it and articulating that, it really is something that it's bigger than that. So I've told people, like, if you can't get the time and the focus and the respect for the exercise from all the way to the top, then you're going to have challenges the whole way. And that's part of the buy-in process. So yeah, my point on that one is there's never a bad time. In fact, I actually think this is a great time, just because everyone has been doing so much more self-reflection and organizational reflection and like what matters to us. That it's, yeah, I would say it's a great time. Well
positioned right now. Yeah, absolutely. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, the best ideas are born in times of adversity. I think that's true. It doesn't make it easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but, good things you do shouldn't be really. But, look at our founding story, 1944. Everything that was going on in the world, and 10 people decided that was a good time to start their own bank, but, they did it, right? And Chris, I've heard Greg talk about the founding principles of traction on demand, which I'm a huge fan of. And again, that came from a sense of personal adversity and the frustration he felt. And he speaks excellently and really passionately to that. So we're all learning so much. Everyone listening to this call now, we're all learning so much through this process. And I think this is a great time to ask yourself those questions and say, okay, but how does it work in this context, right? Quite difficult actually to do that in a benign environment. So I'm not saying it's going to make your life easier in the short term, but I think it's a great time to really start thinking about these big questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I was talking to one of our companies in a different cohort. They're a tourism company, so clearly they're shut down. That only like the top 3 office people are still working away, but they picked up their purpose as a decision lens, because right now they have to look forward to after this, when things reopen, how are we going to show up? How are we going to be experienced? How are things going to be different? And they are leaning on their social purpose to guide their thinking about the future after this, even though they're not operating right now. So in that sense too, every company, and we have about 30 companies right now going through the process, are experiencing this differently. Some are completely shut down, some are at back to day one, but with all of the knowledge and relationships they've built up, and some are still running because they're essential and they can. But all of them that I picked up the phone and talked to everybody, and they're all leaning into their purpose right now. And that's really exciting to see. And our third cohort actually is only maybe halfway through. So they have the really interesting experience of defining their social purpose right now, because they're not that far through. Well, that's you. Yeah. So what an interesting time to be digging into this and seeing just the very process, how that helps. Okay, I think we'll turn it, and unless either of you, Mike or Chris, have any parting words.
I'll actually touch on one of the questions that's on here about the communicating your purpose externally. Mm-hmm. And I've seen both ends of the spectrum. And for us, we kind of decided that no, it's not something we would put on our website and we put out there, because it doesn't explain at all what we do. Like waste no potential, what does that have to do with technology implementation? And it doesn't necessarily help. It's definitely something we rally behind. But I've seen organizations that have it stenciled on their offices, and they have it right out there in the website. There's no necessary. I'll just say there's not a rule around it. I do feel though that it's not the slogan or the tagline or the marketing line. It is the purpose that will inform your slogan, and it will help you validate that slogan and that tagline by looking back at it. But it's not necessarily the one that you put in neon sign in the front of your office.
Cool.
Yeah, you're right. There have been other different approaches. One that you can Google is Hemlock Printers. They recently went public with their social purpose and blogs and all of that, and they're doing a really incredible job of showing up behind it. And you're right, Chris. Like it's not intended to tell everything. It's how you behave beneath it that really tells all of your stakeholders what your social purpose is.
Yeah, and same thing with corporate values. Some organizations put them right out in front, and others it's just kind of in employee handbooks, and there's no rules around it. But it is something that does need to be. You do need to have alignment and buy-in from your entire organization. And then one other point I'll make on that is engagement with customers, partners. That was part of the process to do some validation, get feedback from them. Yeah. Which was great. So those groups that we asked the questions and we told them why we're asking the questions, we did share that with after the fact and just say, does this make sense and does this resonate? So we have engaged those groups very much, but it's not necessarily something we put right in the front of our website. Yeah. It'd be too hard for people to grasp until they get to know us, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so should we just go to a couple of other? There's a question on the in the question box, which is just about the slideshow. Mary Ellen, can we share the slideshow after this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Cheryl also, who's been very active in our chat, also asked earlier about what is a B Corp, and I know you answered that by text, Chris, but if you could just maybe give a one-liner for our audience around what a B Corp is, that would be handy. Yeah,
for sure. So B stands for benefit, and it's a benefit corp, and it's you can have a look. I posted the link in the answers there, but it's it starts with doing a bit of a health assessment on what your how your organization is doing business responsibly. So it includes environment and team and economic and societal, and it's a bit of a process to go through and kind of see where you are, and you get a score. And you need to maintain a certain level of a score to be certified as a B Corp. And if you check out the site, the organizations that are in there, Patagonia, a fellow Purpose Institute company, Salt Spring Coffee, there's everything from resource companies to consumer goods and I think there's close to 4,000 of them worldwide now. Mm-hmm. And the reason we did it, well, I'll be honest, the reason we did it is because we did the assessment. We're pretty close, and we can make a few small changes without a lot of cost or to become a B Corp. But then once you do it, every year you have to go through the assessment process again. And so it kind of keeps you honest a bit. And there's things that change. Like once you grow with that many people and that much of a real estate footprint, that score will go down, but there's other areas where you can move it up and you can make a difference. So it's kind of like committing to a fitness program. And an annual weigh-in, if you will. Yeah, cool. Thanks for that answer. I have a question as well. So you've done a great job of answering all the questions that came in from the audience. So thank you very much for that. But I have a question about measures and measurement. So Mary Ellen showed a slide earlier with the potential benefits, improved customer retention, employee engagement, et cetera, and trust. Do you measure those? And what have you seen as a result of becoming a social purpose-driven organisation? Either of you. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Chris. Because I've probably got the worst answer. So you follow up, Chris, with the better answer. Then everyone will forget mine. I think I'm always a little bit suspicious of measures because then the measure becomes the target, and there's ways to game that and do that. You've got to be really, really smart in the way that you measure these things. Although I think if I was again to go to some certain stakeholder groups, my board included, to say, yeah, no, we're not going to measure this, you'll just take my word for it, or see the smiles on people's faces, that also doesn't work. I'm not quite there actually on that. I think that's definitely going to be part of our journey, and we're in the sort of first half of that right now. But I do think it's important, but I think there's a difference with purpose. There's a difference to the corporate social responsibility. There's a difference even to the B Corp process that Chris just described there. There's a difference to purpose. Then we've got to make sure that we don't oversimplify it with with measures, because then it does become something that can be brand washed or abused in that way, really. So I've not fully got my head wrapped around about that, but you know, hopefully that's going to be part of our journey.
Cool, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, James, that's a tough question, and it's a tough question because it's kind of like, how do you measure brand? And it is, I mean, you could tie it to employee retention, look at retention numbers, but how much of that is based on the economic environment and how much of it is based on culture and brand and that. So I think it's really tough. I think it would be really tough to put specific numbers around the value or the increase in revenue or the increase in retention or lead gen or demand gen from it. But I'll say that the number one, I'll say checkpoint that this was effective and valuable was the buy-in and the excitement of the team, of Greg getting right behind it, of the team. Like when we did a rollout to the team at our quarter end, or our quarter forward, we're calling it, event, just seeing nodding heads and being like, yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think that's another thing. When you arrive at that statement, it's like, it seems so obvious. It seems like it was always there, and that's when we kind of knew it was right, when it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. And it does, you can map it to other things you rallied behind in that before. So it would be a tough one to put a metric behind. And same thing with B Corp. And we actually went through this question the other day. It's like, what is the true value? Like we invest a lot of time in going through this every year. What is the value? Is the value that I can put that logo on a slide in a sales deck? And half the people don't know what it is. So is it actually influencing that? Is it influencing that opportunity? Maybe, maybe not. It definitely influenced our ability to start working with Patagonia, because you pick up the phone and you say you're a fellow B Corp and you work on the Salesforce platform. Can we talk? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, doors open. So, and then the other one I'll add is just the community, like the group of organizations. And we've done a few events recently with the different cohorts. So you get to understand the cohorts you're with, but just starting to see those organizations, you're like, yeah, I'm in a room with the right companies, the companies and people and mindset of how I want to influence myself and my team in that. So as a growing movement, same with B Corp, social purpose is going to be like a little bit like YPO or those groups where it's all of a sudden a community of like-minded organizations.
Thanks for that answer. Mary Ellen, I think we're coming to time. So you want to wind this up?
Sure. Thanks, James. And thanks so much, Mike and Chris. That was amazing. I've heard your stories a lot at every time. I hear new things, and I'm just, again, amazed at who your companies are and why you exist. So this slide here is just wanted to let you know that while we're doing everything virtually, if you want, the SPI is offering some virtual services just during this time. And the panelists that Chris and Mike were both right, truly digging deep into your company's social purpose is a rigorous process, and we don't recommend doing it quickly. But if you're a company like they are, where kind of purpose is already just underlying and you just want to tease it out with a little more clarity, we can help you do that. Sort of a temporary, just-in-time COVID social purpose, if you'd like to do that. And also we can help, we've done this with like Lululemon headquarters here in Vancouver. We can also spend a bit of time with you to help you tease out, maybe you're not ready to really define your purpose, but you know your company can do more in this time, but you don't know what. Tease out your social response to COVID if that would be helpful to you. Because, you know, we and so many other companies believe that social purpose companies will emerge stronger from this crisis, and they will be companies that employees, customers, regulators, and others are looking to help put society back on a sustainable course and change the whole narrative. So that's why we exist here at the Social Purpose Institute, and we want to do whatever we can to further this social purpose movement. So if you want to keep in touch with us, keep up on the latest social purpose news, what's going on, please do follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, sign up for our newsletter. And if you have any follow-up questions or wonder about anything, please drop me a line. Happy to engage with you and see what we can do. Thank you so much for this, James and Monica, or Monique, and United Way Calgary and the Social Impact Lab.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Mike and Chris, it was great to have you today. And if you'd like to continue to engage with us in this topic or others, please come to Open City, which is our open innovation platform. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, of course. And a quick reminder that today's session was recorded, so you'll be able to find it on YouTube, but we'll also send you a link. And next week, we have our next episode, which will be focused on Philanthropy 2.0 and how to get involved. So thanks for joining us today. Be safe and stay healthy, everyone.